That's a tough way to lose a game. Look, overall, I thought the Flyers started the game slow. It didn't help with all the penalties that they took early in the game. There was just absolutely no flow to the game whatsoever. You couldn't get guys like Michkov. You couldn't get guys like Zegras, to get into a flow. They came out in the second period. It still overall looked a little bit sloppy. I think generally the game was just kind of a sloppy game. It looks like they're still really trying to figure out Tocchet's systems and kind of how everyone fits. There were missed passes. It looked a little bit elementary. It's game 2. Not that worried about it, but it looked a little rough. Second period, they played a little more discipline in terms of the penalties, so guys could get into a flow. That's when you saw the Brink, Cates, and Forrester line really break out. They had some really great opportunities. I thought, obviously that was kind of the story of the game. They played their butts off. They looked amazing, and rightly so. Got the start, I believe, in the first and the second. I'm not sure who started the third period, but Tocchet rewarded them, gave them a good amount of ice time, and they even started the 3-on-3 overtime period. So I think in terms of offense, obviously they were the most impressive part of the game. I thought Dvorak actually had a fairly good game. He was in some good spots. He was centering that Zegras and Tippett line for most of the game. But in general, I think he was in the right spots. It seemed like he was crowding the net. He was making a little bit of chaos. I thought he had a pretty good game. Zegras, I thought, looked a little flat. We're going to stick with that line a little bit. I thought he looked a little bit flat for a good portion of the game. Where he really shined was when he gets open space. So I think that's going to be something he has to work on. He's going to need to figure out how to be a little bit better when there's more pressure. In open space, he's a wizard. I mean, you saw it in the 3-on-3. He was setting guys up. He was stick handling around. When there's wide open ice, guys like him are really skilled, and that's when he sparked. You could see his spark when there was a lot more open ice for him to play with. And so I think Zegras can be really dangerous, especially in those when we have a man advantage, if we're on a power play for sure, or, spots like overtime. I think he's really going to shine. The goaltending situation, Sam Ersson played a really good game. Those goals were not his fault. There was defensive breakdowns. Bobby Brink goes all the way in, takes a shot, misses the net, it wraps, and then our defensemen are flat-footed. They're pinching in the zone, and the Canes are off to the races. They score. He made some 10-bell saves. Even in the overtime period, he looked pretty good. There were some really big saves from Sam Ersson. So I think in terms of the goalie situation, Rick Tocchet's got a situation on his hands. He's going to have to think about coming home to the home opener on Monday against the reigning champion Florida Panthers. Who's going to get the net? Because Dan Vladar looked really good in game 1, and Sam Ersson looked really good tonight as well. Obviously, there were some points where it got a little scary, but overall, I think he had a really good game. Jet Luchenko and Nikita Grabenkin were a story as well, getting their first starts of the season, drawing into the lineup. Luchenko, I felt, was more of a neutral than anything. On the Bobby Brink goal, he basically set that whole sequence up by driving the puck deep in the zone, kept possession. He got into a little bit of a physical battle with Shane Gostisbehere, former Flyer, but was able to make sure that puck stayed deep in the zone, and that ended up squirting out to the top of the circle, and that's where Bobby Brink absolutely laser beamed top shelf over Freddie Anderson's shoulder. And then he turns, a couple plays later, Luchenko turns around and makes a tape-to-tape pass straight to, I think it was Svechnikov on the Canes, and then they go down and score. So, I think he was kind of just a net neutral for the night. He didn't look absolutely awful, but he didn't look, fabulous. I think he's going to take some time. He's got some work to do. Obviously, the debate is, if he should even be on the roster at this point. I think there's an argument for both sides, and we can get into that a little bit later. I thought he was pretty much a net neutral tonight. Nikita Grabenkin, on the other hand, looked really, really strong on the puck. I thought he had a good game, tenacious along the boards, really, really strong on the puck. He can handle the puck too. He's got good awareness. He's got a great shot. So if he can really get rolling on the fourth line, I think maybe he makes his way up a little bit. Maybe third line, maybe second line, but having that type of talent on the fourth line is going to be really good. So he had a great debut for the Flyers tonight. Let's talk about this overtime period. Obviously, an awful way to lose. I mean, Travis Sanheim and Bobby Brink kind of connect there, and Brink just stuffs it home. I freaked out. I started screaming. Then it gets disallowed because of goalie interference. And then, of course, Seth Jarvis just roofs it on Sam Harrison not a minute later, and the Canes end up winning the game. I think the argument people are making is that Frederik Andersen looked like he was the one that was initiating contact on what was originally, an allowed goal and then disallowed. I'll read the rule book definition of a goal interference. Goals should be and this is talking about disallowed goals. Goals should be disallowed only if an attacking player, either by his positioning or by contact, impairs the goalkeeper's ability to move freely within his crease or defend his goal. Or 2, an attacking player initiates intentional or deliberate contact with a goalkeeper inside or outside of his goal crease. Incidental contact with a goalkeeper will be permitted and resulting goals allowed when such contact is initiated outside of the goal crease, provided the attacking player has made a reasonable effort to avoid such contact. And it goes on a little further. Look, Sanheim was 2 feet in the crease when the contact was made. He also did not necessarily make a reasonable move to get out of the way. He was not pushed into the crease, and therefore contact was made inside of the goal crease with the goalie. If that contact had happened and Frederik Andersen was outside of his crease, I think that would have been an allowed goal because it was incidental contact outside of the goal crease. In this case, almost always, if there's contact with the goalie in the crease and, Frederik Andersen may have sold it a little bit. It looked like he kind of flopped. But from the review, Frederik Andersen was contacted by Travis Sanheim, whether he initiated the contact or not. He was contacted by Travis Sanheim, who didn't make a reasonable move to get out of the way, and then was hindered, and he couldn't make the save. So I think that was the reason that they disallowed the goal. It seems to be up for debate whether it was a good or a bad call. I'll just say I'm not surprised that they disallowed it because of the contact being inside of the crease, like very far. It wasn't like his toe was in the crease. He was 2 feet, both of his skates inside of the crease, swooping through, not pushed in by any means. So I think that was their rationale. And that's a really tough way to lose a game, a really hard-fought game to a really good team. Some think the best team in the Metropolitan Division. So all in all, I think that was a good showing from the Flyers. I think back-to-back, game 1 and game 2, pretty good showing. Great performance from the goaltenders. It seems like our third, fourth line, we have some depth maybe on this team, and I think once they figure out Toccott's systems, I think we can get rolling. This might be the beginnings of a season that maybe no one's expecting. So, game 2, not so bad.